Horror in the mountains.
It was supposed to be just a quiet weekend in the mountains. My best friend Michael and I were going to go camping, enjoy nature, and stargaze at night. But we did not expect what was to come. The trip started smoothly. As I drove along the winding road, we chatted about life. But midway, a huge fallen tree blocked the passage. With no other option, we detoured onto a nearby dirt road. It led us to an eerie, isolated house amidst the trees. As it was getting dark already, we decided to ask for shelter there. An elderly woman answered the door and, to our surprise, allowed us to spend the night. The interior of the house was dusty and full of cobwebs. On the walls, some pentagrams and strange symbols. Michael felt uncomfortable, but I insisted it was just for one night. Besides, we could not continue our trip with the road blocked. We went to sleep in separate rooms upstairs. In the middle of the night, I woke up to noises in the hallway. They sounded like shuffling steps and eerie whispers. Candle-like lights illuminated the hallway outside the room. I thought about checking if Michael had woken up too, but fear paralyzed me. The wind howled outside. I pretended to sleep until the sounds ceased. In the morning, Michael was pale. He had also heard disturbing sounds. As we came downstairs, we found breakfast on the table, but no sign of the old woman. We ate quickly and decided to leave there as soon as possible. We were exiting the house when we heard a loud noise coming from the basement and a horrifying scream that sounded like an animal's. We decided to investigate, already completely terrified. We went down the damp stairs, following the sounds of indecipherable chanting. That's when we witnessed something frightening. In the center of the dimly lit basement was a macabre altar with candles and arcane symbols. Around it, hooded figures chanted in an unknown language. On the altar, the elderly woman with a bloodied dagger in her hands, and next to her, a dying goat with a huge gash in its neck. She turned and saw us, opening a ghastly smile. The hooded figures advanced and, before we could react, we were contained and tied up. Then we realized, this was no ordinary house, it was a lair of a demonic cult. They planned our sacrifice in some evil ritual. We struggled in vain trying to free ourselves as the cultists prepared. It seemed like the end, but I refused to die without a fight. As I wrestled, I managed to loosen the ropes enough to free one hand. With superhuman effort, I untied my legs and lunged at the old woman, shoving her with all my might against the wall. She hit her head and collapsed unconscious on the floor. I took the dagger from her hands. The hooded figures, enraged, charged at me. I managed to strike two in the stomach, clearing the way to get to Michael. With the dagger, I cut his ropes and freed him. We ran frantically upstairs as the cult pursued us. The house's exit door was locked with a huge iron padlock. So we went up one more floor and locked ourselves in one of the rooms. We were trapped. That's when Michael had an idea. To tie bedsheets together to climb out the window. Tying the ends to the bed, we improvised a rope and climbed down, just before the cultists broke into the room. We escaped into the woods as we heard their deranged screams behind us. Exhausted, we stopped under a large tree and breathed a sigh of relief at being alive. But our joy was short-lived. Soon we spotted the hooded figures in the distance, coming our way. We ran desperately, but they quickly gained ground. That's when Michael tripped and twisted his ankle. He begged me to go on without him, but I refused to abandon him. We were caught by the cult. They tied our hands and dragged us back to the house. Inside the basement, the old woman awaited us with her demonic stare. She tore Michael's clothes with the dagger, getting ready to plunge it into his chest. I screamed in despair, knowing I would be next. I closed my eyes as the blade pierced Michael's flesh. His shriek of pain was something I would never forget. He was gone. I had to think fast if I didn't want to suffer the same fate. Some of the cult members held large torches, and that's when I got the idea to go push one of them against the old woman, using my momentum to crash him into her with my shoulder. The priestess's robe then caught on fire. She began screaming in agony, and while the cultists tried to put out the flames, I jumped up to the upper floor, where I found a sharp axe near the fireplace. I managed to use the blade to cut myself free, and with the axe in hand, I busted open the exit door. I left the house and desperately tried to spot my car, but it was no longer there. The hooded figures began coming out of the building wielding daggers, so I desperately ran toward the woods again. Running through the dense vegetation, I noticed the sound of what seemed to be a river. I followed that sound and came upon a large, fast-flowing river. Looking back, I saw the satanic cultists were nearly upon me, so I had no choice. I jumped into the river. I tried my best to stay away from rocks and above the water level, but the current was too strong. When I was nearly exhausted, I managed to grab onto a large fallen tree trunk. I rode the log until it carried me to a calmer part of the river, where I could grab the rocks and reach the shore. On firm land, I walked a few meters until I got to the road, where I spotted a small gas station. I asked the attendant if I could use the phone and called the police. It didn't take long for the officers to arrive, and I related everything that had happened. At the station, I was informed they managed to locate the house, but no sign of the cult members or my friend Michael, just traces of blood scattered around. My friend's body was never found, nor any member of that damned cult. Now I live in fear and with the terrible memories of that day. But one thing is for certain, I will never return to those mountains.